So in this video now, I would like to look at cognitive development from a very, very different angle. All right, another gentleman named Mr. Erik Erikson, and I do believe he was, I think he was Swedish, although I stand to be corrected on that. Apologies if Mr. Erikson wasn't Swedish. He had a very, very different way of looking at how it is that we cognitively develop. He looked at life not just from an infancy perspective, but more from a holistic perspective. The various levels and stages of life that we can go through in terms of our maturity and cognitive development. So we'll just jump right into this one. I'll let you have a look at the guy first and foremost. That's him, handsome man, all right, isn't he? I hope I end up looking as handsome as this when I'm his age. Maybe we'll see. So Erik Erikson's stages of development. What he suggested, he just broke life down into 8 different phases, if you like, right? He looked first and foremost at the infancy phase, and he said and suggested that infancy is between newborn to around about 18 months, there or thereabout. And what these little people are learning through this phase of their life is whether the world is a good place, a bad place, whether it's a safe place, whether it's an unsafe place, whether they can trust people or whether they can't. All right, they're going to learn how to cognitively respond to people and circumstances and situations they're in on a very, very simplistic level. Can I trust you to be there for me? Can I trust you to give me what I need? Or can I not trust you? Must I shut down and learn to fend for myself? All right, these are fantastic and really, really big ideas, because it's very, very easy, isn't it, to judge a person by their actions or behaviors. But remember, this whole cognitive approach really acknowledges that all behaviors, all habits, all attitudes are learned. It's these theories and these processes that really allow us to gain a little bit of insight into just how it is that we learn our habitual responses, attitudes, behaviors towards other people, towards the world. In life. So then we go through this kind of phase of being toddlers between 18 months to around about 3 years old. And this is when we're going through this autonomous phase, right? We're starting to walk and do things on our own. When we're little bambinos, we're quite helpless, aren't we? All right? If you've got a child or if you've had a child this phase, they're pretty much reliant on mum and dad for pretty much everything. But then they reach those terrible 2s and they start running about and they want to put fingers in everything and they're very inquisitive and they want to work things out for themselves, even though we know they're just not ready to at this stage, but it's not going to stop them from trying. Autonomy and doubt, and this is about them testing themselves, what they're capable of. They don't just want to be reliant on mum and dad for all things, although they are reliant for a lot of things. They want to be walking around by themselves. They don't want to be held and controlled. They want to be starting to make decisions for themselves. And they're going to doubt the trustworthiness of anyone who's going to impose any form of control or manipulation on them, right? Hence the reason you say no to a child. Little Jimmy says, Mummy, I want sweets. If they can even say that at the age of 3 years old, the mummy says no, because mummy knows best, and little Jimmy has a temper tantrum, all right? This is where we're figuring out what we can trust people for and what we can't, all right? It's different from the earlier phase. It's very, very black and white. Can I trust this person fully in or fully out? This stage here is more about, okay, so what specifically is it? Can I trust you for now? Can I trust you to give me everything that I want? Or some things that I want? Can I trust you to be there for me when I need you to be there for me? Can I trust you to protect me, to keep me safe? Can I trust you to feed me, to integrate routine into my life? Can I trust you to discipline me? What can I trust you for? Not just can I trust you or can I not trust you? Then we'll go to the junior schooler years. And this is where the lessons that we've learned throughout the earlier stages of development can start impacting a child's, it's not ability, it's his willingness to receive and retain new information or new ideas. Say, for example, a young person hasn't had that meaningful connection with a parent or a significant other in their life. Remember, when we're young, we are just assigning meanings onto things, and if we don't have someone to keep us right, if we don't have someone in our life, i.e. a parent or a guardian or a role model, who's keeping us grounded in truth, then we're at this age, we're going to be just putting 2 and 2 together and coming up with 76, aren't we? So mummy never gave me the cuddles that I wanted. Daddy didn't smile at me that time, which therefore must mean that I'm bad, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not lovable enough. Now, okay, let's fast forward a few years in life, and we will do as we get down here. But let's think about some of your greatest concerns, your greatest fears. Is there any aspect or any area in your life where you just don't feel suffice, where you just don't feel enough? When you're asked to do something and you just think, oh, I couldn't do that. I'm just not smart enough, or I'm just not skilled enough, or I'm just not articulate enough, or I'm not good looking enough, or I'm not this enough, or I'm not that enough, or I'm just not downright good enough. Right? We all have these insecurities and doubts, but they're generally learned through these phases of our life in response to the level of connection and interaction that we get with significant others in our lives. Are you with me? Now, you might think this is crazy. This is completely irrational. But children interpret life in the way in which they interpret life, as children do, as infants. All right? So let's link this idea back with an idea that I shared a few times in the last section of the course, and this is that growing up in life is about maturing. It's about growing up and out of the limiting, unhelpful beliefs and ways of looking at life that we develop back when we're very, very young, throughout these earlier stages of our development. See how it all ties in? So, school, a senior schooler between the age of 5 to 13. Now, this is kind of where Jean Piaget's stages of development kind of got capped, all right? This is where now people are either seeing themselves, have you ever seen a child who's just really confident? They don't have any problems going into a crowd and just being themselves and speaking and giving voice to their opinions and their theories and all this kind of stuff. And then you have other children who just sit there and not say boo to a goose. And the best game they play in life is the one that's going on inside of their head. The difference between thinkers and doers, well, that's the difference between those who learn to be sociable, confident, grounded within themselves, those who've had a healthy parental upbringing, who've been on the receiving end of good, healthy connection. They've been on the receiving end of trust-based relationships. They know where they stand with their parents, and they've developed a healthy identity through the process. These people don't have a problem being sociable because there's no form of social judgment or comparison going on. You know how in life sometimes we judge ourselves in comparison to other people. So we look at other people, and in the early stages of a relationship, we're looking to work out and establish whether they are better than us or lesser than us. And if we think they are better than us, we'll sometimes shy away. Or if we think that we are better than them, we'll sometimes get all confident and big for our boots and try to lord it over them. Well, that's the mark of an insecure person, a person who feels inferior in life. It's only people who naturally doubt themselves, if they've learned to doubt themselves, who need to compare themselves to others. But when a person's grounded within themselves, secure in their own identity, confident because they've been on the receiving end of love and affection and meaningful connection through their parental experience, they're okay. They know they're okay. They know they're lovable. They know they're acceptable. And therefore, they know that, if a person in school doesn't like them, it's not the end of the world. It doesn't matter. Whereas those who feel inferior, a rejection or a little bit of name-calling or bullying can be enough to absolutely devastate a young person in this stage of their development. So this then moves on now to the teenage years, or the years of adolescence. Call this what you want. Between the ages of 13 to 21. What we're now going to start to see is a young person either begin to develop a strong sense of identity, they're becoming grounded and mature and secure in who they are, or they're going to be completely confused. If a person is not strong and grounded in their identity by this stage of their life, then they're going to be grasping and clutching at straws, embracing any social label that any group of people will place on them. This is why some young men, for example, will join certain extreme religious groups, and they'll go and partake in some extreme behaviours. Why? because they perhaps had a role model or a mentor or someone who was significantly older than them that they looked up to, and they said, I trust you. And then this older person knew that these young people were looking up to them, so they would use this to manipulate them and saying, right, if you want to make your way into heaven, then strap some explosives on your chest and go and kill all these people, because this is who you are. Your role is this religion. And then they go and do that because they're not strong in their identity. Sexually, religiously, educationally, male, female, gay, straight, it doesn't matter, right? I'm good enough, I'm not good enough. When a person's grounded within themselves, they do not need labels. This is why I absolutely despise, and I'm just being real with you here, I absolutely despise the damage that the American Association for Psychiatry has done on much of the Western world. A bunch of academics, and that's all that they were, academic scholars sat around the table back around about 40 years ago, and they had lists of symptoms that people can have in life, i.e. feelings, actions, behavioural patterns, habits, and they categorised them into conditions, mental health, illnesses, and that's all that happened. That's it. That's all that happened. So today, young people go along confused within themselves. They're not grounded in their identity. And they say, I don't know who I am. So a doctor says, well, you are anxious, you are stressed, you are depressed, you are this, you are that, you are the next thing, you are your condition, you are your behaviour, you are how you feel. And then they go away and they use this label as a means by which to justify why they act and behave for many years to follow. Now, some people will do their best to justify the labels that have been assigned onto them until they're blue in the face. But if you think about it, even that is understandable. Why? Because if a person doesn't know who they are, they're clutching at straws. Any label will doodle-do. And it's sad. Our role as CBT practitioners, you've got to understand, is a crucial one. When we're working with people, they're going to come to us. They're not going to some of them aren't going to know if they're male, female, gay, straight, bi-gendered, transgendered, whatever you call these days, black, white, religious, non-religious, Christian, Muslim. They don't know. People are blinded by all of the labels that get branded around throughout society. And why I'm saying this is because our role is to help people become grounded in the facts, what's true. And there's no label that we could assign onto ourselves as human beings that is large enough and grand enough to contain us. We're all so much more than our labels. We all have the capacity and the ability to be so much more. The problem that many people have is that they assign labels onto themselves, and then it's kind of like putting oneself in a box. This is my label, this is who I am, therefore this is how I must act and behave and conform. And this becomes their belief in identity, which then spawns pretty much all of their actions, their behaviours, their habits moving forward. You've got to understand, this is big stuff. This is really, really, really big stuff. All right? One thing I will never do, and I'm going to plead with you, never to embrace or buy into a self-imposed label that a person has already subscribed to. Some people will come to you and they'll say, I am this, I am that, I have this, I have that. And it's not about us disacknowledging, it's not about us undermining. Remember, if a certain label is the most prominent sense of identity that a person has, right, it would be absolutely compassionless for us to whip this away. What we want to do and what we want to learn how to do is just simply help those people that we work with to expand their maps, all right? Just to look at, okay, so this might be how they are in one aspect of life, but let's look at all aspects of life. Let's look at a bigger picture. Let's see who else we can be. Let's see who it is that we definitely aren't. Let's see who it is that we could be. Let's see if we can establish a vision for how it is that we might continue to grow and develop and become more. Because this is kind of the essence of what everyone wants to understand in life, all right? Who can I become? I don't want to be limited. I don't want to be stuck in a box. I don't want to be the labels that I've assigned onto myself or that other people have assigned onto me. I want to be more. And if you think about it, living and operating inside of labels doesn't give us any freedom. It kind of just gives us boundaries, doesn't it? I'm not talking about healthy boundaries here. I'm talking about boxed-in boundaries. So, you can see how it is that the earlier years of our development in life can really ground us in the beliefs and the sense of identity that we have for the rest of our lives if If a person is not on a receiving end of positive input and positive, healthy, mature role models throughout these years of their life, they can end up spending the rest of their lives unlearning that which they've learned about themselves. And it's heartbreaking and it's sad, but it's just the nature of reality. It's what it means to live in today's world. So, all right, then people evolve and become young adults between the age of 21 to 39. 21 to 39, still a young adult. Fantastic, right? If you're 38, 39, just teetering on the edge of 40, this is going to fill you with confidence right now. You're still a young adult, my friend. If you're over 40, you're old. All right, nothing you can do about that. But look at this. All right, look at how as we grow to relate to ourselves throughout these earlier years, goes on to influence how it is that we then go on to relate to other people. Now, I have worked with a lot of people over the years who come to me with this role confusion thing going on. All right, they're trying desperately to conform to how they believe they should conform in response to a label that's been assigned onto them. All right, i.e., a certain religious or a set of sexual preferences. All right, so then they come and I say, okay, so fantastic. So what's the actual problem here? I'm depressed. I'm anxious, I'm this, I'm just a really low mood. And then I ask them those awkward questions again. Well, are you depressed or do you feel isolated? Do you feel bored? Are you feeling kind of confused, a little bit directionless, helpless, hopeless in life? Let's break this down so we can get clear on what the actual problem is. And what most people, especially throughout these years of their life, struggle with, believe it or not, feelings of loneliness and isolation. That's it. That's the truth. It's depressed, sad, yes, because of isolation and loneliness. When a person is not completely grounded in their identity, what they end up 9 times out of 10 doing is trying to be who they think they need to be in order to fit in with the social group that they identify with the most. Do you see this? All right? When a person's not secure and grounded in who they are, they'll do their best to fit in with any social group or clique or organisation or religious body or social group that'll have them, whoever they identify with the most. And if a group then subscribes and buys into a certain way of speaking or a certain way of acting or behaving, then guess what? In order to continue to fit in, one must conform to groupthink, to how group acts. Do you see it? It's rife throughout society. There's a pretty good chance you can relate in some area of your life. Think about it. Have you ever found yourself acting or behaving or communicating in a certain way around certain groups of people because you fundamentally know that if you don't relate or communicate or interact the same way as those people, then you're going to be excluded? I can give you an example. So, my wife Karen and I, we come from opposite ends of the spectrum, all right? Where I was born and raised in the military as a soldier around a certain type of people. Karen was born and raised in the Church of Scotland. Karen was a good Christian girl, and I was just a naughty soldier. Used to get himself into all sorts of problem and up to all sorts of antics. Now, so obviously me and Karen met, all right? And yes, we were two very different people. So what I done in the early stages of our relationship was I committed to attending the church that Karen would go to, all right? Not because I wanted some sort of conversion or that I really wanted to be saved or anything like that. I just wanted to understand Karen's frame of reference. I wanted to understand Karen's behaviour and why she devoted her life to this. Now, we didn't find much, and to cut the story short, Karen ended up leaving a year or so later as well. But the reason why I say this is because I just didn't fit in, right? On a Sunday, we'd go along to this church group, and they were there, hands in the air and singing songs and like floating around like butterflies and flying flags and all this kind of thing. And I'm like, I was doing my best not to laugh. I'm just going to be straight here. Terribly sorry if you're a flag-flying Christian out there, all right? I just never saw the need in it, right? I'm sure there's a reason for it because all behaviour is learned, so I get this. And I'll never judge a person for their behaviour. But this pattern of behaviour was just a million miles removed from anything that I was used to, anything that I would even consider subscribing to. So you weren't going to catch me with a flag in my hands, flying the Jesus flag. All right. So anyway, I would ask questions. I would say, so why are you flying flags? Can I just ask, why are your hands up in the air? Why are people kind of floating around like butterflies? I would just ask the question, and people would get so unbelievably defensive. This is just what we do. What? And then I ended up developing a bit of a reputation for being a rebel. I couldn't believe it, right? But it was only because I didn't conform to groupthink. I didn't conform to group act, right? So all the behaviors that people would subscribe to each week, they were all at it. I remember going to a prayer meeting one day and they're all there stamping their feet on the floor, doing all this kind of stuff. And I'm not knocking anything here. But, it was kind of like being at a silent disco. They're all at it. It was, sorry, I don't know if that's inappropriate. But because I didn't conform to the actions and the behaviors and this kind of pattern of being, I was never really accepted in the church. Elders and all these sorts of things were always a little bit wary of me, especially. They saw me being some outsider coming and stealing away their little Karen. So we had a few issues to work through there. I tell you that story because on some level you can probably relate. All right. If we are conforming to a group way of being or thinking or acting or speaking, we're not thinking for ourselves. And that's it, which means we're not grounded in our own identity. All right. When we are defining ourselves by a role or an identity label that we've assigned onto ourselves, we're not free. We're not liberating strong, mature, liberated and balanced lives. All right. If conformity is required from us on some level, we're not free. And we all want to be free, don't we? So let's evolve. When we are trying to be someone that we're not, in order just to fit in, what we're often going to be doing is compromising our own authenticity, our own integrity, our own sincerity. Right? Now, what I'm not doing here is I'm not communicating well. I'm saying some things that might upset or offend some people, but I'm just being honest about my experience. I don't say these things to offend. I say all these things to enlighten, to raise your awareness, to build you up, not tear you down. All right? Why? Because what many people will do, they will fight to defend the identity labels that they've assigned onto themselves. And this comes at the cost of personal liberation and freedom. So when a person is fighting to defend an identity label, what they can end up doing is isolating themselves or over-identifying with this label, which ends up just leading them further and further away from their own true identity. And this is big stuff. This is a really, really big deal. So, young adults between the ages of 21 to 39 end up developing networks of intimate, close, meaningful connections with people, or they end up completely isolated and alone, lonely. Now, regardless of how you feel about what I've just said, some of these stories, look at where you're actually at in life. Can you, hand on heart, say that you are surrounded by people who you are in intimate relationships with, meaningful, healthy, connected relationships? Or do you still find yourself conforming, trying to fit in, trying to be the kind of person that you think other people want you or need you to be? Because if so, my friend, you're not free. All right, which means you've learned something quite unhealthy about yourself throughout the earlier stages of development. These are big ideas, my friends, big ideas. So let's evolve, then we get to middle-aged adults, and this is between 40 to 65. So I think I said in the last video, if you're 40, you're ancient. You're not. You're just a middle-aged adult, which isn't as bad as being ancient. Now this is an interesting part, right? Because many people that I've worked with over the years, clients, have come to me maybe around about 45 to 50, sometimes 55, and they're bored. They would say they're depressed, they feel depressed, they're depressed because they're bored, because they have stagnated. They've ended up working in a career or a job, or they've been in a marriage for 25 years that was lifeless. And it was lifeless for a reason. It was lifeless because they never changed, they never invested into it. All right. Now, I've married Karen. We've been married about 6 or 7 years now. And I fully intend on remaining married to Karen until death do us part. Right? Why? Because there's no reason for a marriage ever to become stagnant. Not if two people in a marriage continue to keep on generating, growing, developing, expanding, becoming more. When we assign labels onto ourselves because we're not grounded in our role or in our identity, then we stagnate I am this, which means I must behave this way. I am an academic, which means I must be academic all of the time. I am of a certain religious mindset. I am this, I am that, I'm the next thing. People generally tend to operate and function out of the identity beliefs that they have. All right, I'll share with you a story here, and it's a story of a crow and a tarantula. Now, there was a crow sitting at the side of a lake, and he was picking up some grubs one day, and a tarantula walked up to him, and the crow kind of got on his defensive, and the tarantula said, "Mr. Crow, listen, I'm trying to get across the other side of the lake. Any chance you could, let me jump on your back and fly me over?" And the crow hesitantly, warily said, "Absolutely not. I know that tarantulas have a habit of biting crows, and I want to live to ripe old age. I don't want to die, so absolutely not. Just please keep your distance, Mr. Tarantula." Then the tarantula said, "No, but listen, Mr. Crow, I really want to get across there. I want to see my wife and kids. My little legs are only small. It'll take me about 3 days to walk around there if I don't get pecked up or eaten by some predatory creature along the way." And Mr. Crow started thinking, okay, well, you've got a wife and kids. How? Okay, go on then. So he put his wing down and the tarantula crawled up and sat on his back. Mr. Crow then took off, started flying across the lake. And as they're halfway across, he felt these fangs plunge in the back of his neck. And that was it. Mr. Crow said, "Mr. Tarantula, why have you done this? Why have you bitten me? I've done you this good turn. Now I can feel your venom flowing through my veins. We're going to head for the water and we're both surely going to drown. We're both going to croak it. We're both going to die. Why would you do this to us?" And the tarantula said, "Ho, ho, 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 because I'm a tarantula. And that's what tarantulas do. We bite crows." And what I'm saying here is that we do not have to conform to the labels that we place upon ourselves. All right, this is why it's imperative we develop a strong sense of identity. I'm going to share with you some models in a later section that are going to really help you and enable you to help yourself or help other people do this. When we are grounded in our identity, then all this ever leaves us is in this place where we're no longer needing to prove ourselves or be accepted anymore. It leaves us free to simply grow and expand and continue to be. All right, which is kind of what makes life quite interesting sometimes, where we grow and push ourselves and stretch ourselves to become more, right? Striving to be our best and become more looks very, very different from trying to fit in and be accepted and being liked and approved of by other people. And it's those two attitudes that leads a person into generativity or stagnation, all right? Could you imagine being completely false with other people your whole life just for the purpose of trying to fit in? Well, guess what? If you're being false, you're not being honest, you're not being integral, you're not being sincere, which means that people aren't stupid. They'll eventually see through your facade and ultimately not trust you. And I don't know about you, but I certainly have absolutely no desire on entering into a relationship with anyone who's false, anyone who is not authentic, transparent, integral, or sincere with me. And this is what leaves people to stagnate. In life, it's iron that sharpens iron. People sharpen people. And it's only when we commit to this lifestyle of just being ourselves that we grow to understand and appreciate and realize points of view and perspectives that perhaps we've never been subjected to previously in the past. And this is how we grow. All right? Education, growing, we can't afford to stop growing just when we leave education. Growing must be a lifelong process. If we're not growing, we're stagnating. And if we're stagnating, we're kind of dying. And this is what's true just for us individually, personally, is especially true in the context of a marriage or an intimate relationship. If two people aren't growing together, then they're going to be growing apart. Full stop. Right? It's one of these universal principles that just, we can debate and we can disagree with, but it doesn't make it any less true. It just is true. Then we get older. And based upon how our lives has gone, based upon how effective we have learned to be at interacting and engaging and connecting with other people in a meaningful way, it's all going to be determined by how effectively we've learned to relate to ourselves. Let's link all of this back to an idea shared in the last section of the course. And this is that self-awareness must come first. If we are not aware of ourselves, if we are not growing in awareness, we're not going to grow in our ability to manage ourselves and self-regulate. If we're not self-regulating and managing ourselves well, then we might struggle to be aware of other people, how we're being received by others, and where other people are at. If we're focused solely on ourselves and protecting ourselves or justifying ourselves, then we're giving no other human being any reason to want anything to do with us, which is what leads a person into isolation in their 20s to late 30s, into a place of stagnation in their 40s to mid 60s, then ultimately into a place of despair when they reach the age of 65 plus and they realise that they've actually really screwed their lives up. They've spent their whole lives trying to justify or prove themselves. Many of their friends have moved on, have gone, people have got married, left, they're on their own, and they've pretty much wasted their life. I guess when we're young, we sometimes fall into this trap of thinking that we're going to live forever. That, I can just believe what I want to believe, and I can just have whatever opinion I want to have, and I can just think what I think and act how I want to act. It's all about me just doing whatever I want. People should just accept me unconditionally and my behaviours and my attitudes and all that kind of thing. Life doesn't work like this. Unless people are finding us as being valuable human beings that they can fundamentally trust, then they're not going to want anything to do with us. Right? It's just a fact, right? I can't be bothered with people who are more interested in pulling the wool over my eyes and trying to fool me into thinking that they're someone that they actually aren't. I would rather just keep my life simple and know exactly where to stand with people. I would rather have a few intimate, meaningful relationships than multiple shallow acquaintances. All right, but that's just me though. All right. So when a person reaches this stage of their life, they'll be living from a place of absolute integrity, where they're not worried about their imperfections. They're not worried about putting their foot in their mouth every now and again, or miscommunicating, or anything like that. They're not going to be worried about perfection, getting it right, getting it wrong. Living with integrity becomes far more important. This is who I am. This is what I stand for. These are my standards. This is what I'm all about. And if you don't buy into this, if this isn't okay with you, then please, kindly move on. Go and disapprove of me somewhere else, because I have no time for you. But here's the thing, if we reach this stage of life and we have no meaningful connections, and we've just got a whole series of failed relationships because we generally tended to put our opinions and perspectives and worldviews before understanding other people, then we're going to end up in a place of isolation, stagnation, and despair. Now, my friend, I'm painting you a picture of the worst case scenario, all right? Bring your whole life into context, all right? Allow yourself to be transformed through this process. Never mind what you think. Never mind how you feel. Never mind what you agree with or what you don't agree with. Look at where you're going in life. Live life with the end in mind. Every single decision that we make today is going to have a consequence tomorrow. This is the basic ABC model, all right? Consequences and the results that we have in our life, they're not to do with everyone else. It's not anyone else's fault. It's all to do with us, all right? Every attitude, every behavior, every action that we subscribe to or take, every word that we say is going to result in an outcome. These outcomes, potentially, eventually, us living grounded lives of integrity, or us living isolated lives, stagnant lives in a place of complete despair. My friend, this is just a theory. It's just a way of looking at life. But I guess this can bring our life into context, as I've mentioned, and it can help us to evaluate where we're at today, the decisions that we're making and why we're making those decisions. What is it that we actually want to accomplish and achieve here? Where are we actually going? What are we trying to protect? Why are we living life the way in which we're living life? This is pretty much all that theories help us do. Help us to relate to ourselves far more accurately, but only if we're willing to relate these theories to ourselves and reflect openly, honestly, about where we're actually at. So my friend, listen, I hope you found this interesting. I appreciate some of these ideas might seem and have felt a little bit challenging, confrontational even, but remember, I share all of this to build you up, not tear you down, not to confront or contradict, all right, to help you grasp a grander and wider and more holistic picture of reality and also your life. Also, what you're capable of becoming and who you're more than capable of potentially being. All right. fascinating theory. Hope you found this one interesting, and I'll look forward to seeing you again in the next clip.